In this video, I will talk about HDR, the relation with the Tonemapper, and how to calibrate HDRs. When HDRs are taken, they're taken into various lighting conditions. Either they are interiors or outside. The lighting, when it's taken, varies a lot. The amount of light varies a lot. And this can be, for example, be measured with a light meter. Light meter load works like this. You usually turn it on, then turn the knob over here until the needle comes to 0. When this comes to 0, you can read the value, the EV value over here, which corresponds to the ISO that you have there. When this is correct, you can check the value here and set your camera to either any of those values will be correct. So f-stop and a speed. So what corresponds to EV? EV, for example, an EV15 is typical for subjects in bright or hazy sun, where like 7 would be something that has been into bright lighted nighttime streets or indoor sports places. So when you get EV, like EV15, there's various F numbers and shutter speeds that can be set to get for that EV. So you can choose, for example, F22 and 1/60, and that would be the correct amount to get a proper exposure with objects under bright sun. And this table shows a little bit how this is done. In iReviewer, we do the calculation internally. So let's take this scene here. So we have over there the camera Tonemapper. And if you look into camera, down here, this is the Tonemapper with all the values. So right now you see EV7, and this corresponds for F1 here with ISO 100 and a shutter speed of 128. Now, how you get this and adjust that? So let's select this object here. I've set a simple Omni light. So first I've modified it to have a diffuse color. Very often it does not contain any, so it looks black because it's not reflecting light. But very often objects, even object that emits light, have a small coating. So even if it's not lit, you see it. So now I'm going to turn on the light here. So you can see the light, and this is correct under this lighting condition. This is sort of small studio. And if I'm opening this here, you can see EV7, which actually I'm taking this as indoor sport. Now if I click here on sun and sky, it turns to 15, which is subject under bright sun. But if you look to the light that I had, you don't see it bright anymore. This is because there's so much sun outside that the light does not appear to be lighting the environment. So now, what happens if you bring HDRs and you wanted to have them all being calibrated? So let's bring this HDR there. So I'll just drag and drop here an HDR. Oh, so this one here should be taken under bright sun. So let's look at this. Well, this is incorrect. The EV is set to 1. 1 would correspond actually to very, very dark. Total eclipse, moon. It's not really this. This should be more like 15. Now this is completely under darkness, so I'm gonna raise that up until actually when I'm looking to it, it looks fine. So it's like probably the HDR has been meant to look like that. Now, if I'm looking at my scene here, then it looks fine. Now, when you have this, iView will store the information about this HDR in that EV here. If I'm opening the Tonemapper, I can now play a little bit with the exposure. So for example, if I'm rotating around my object, so I can just make the proper adjustment. I know the amount of light that was coming to this place, but now I just want to make the subtle adjustments to it. I'll just bring another HDR here. Let's take this studio. Now into the studio it looks okay. It is actually lighting because here I got EV9 proper lighting, and you can see the light shining. Let's take another one outside here. See, outside, this one calibrated to 12. Is 12 making sense? So the sun is shining, it's going down. This looks to be fine. It's just before sunset. This is probably correct. And actually, you can see how the light should be. And finally, let's take a night reference. Okay, a night reference. So here, the HDR looks fine, but somehow at night, I would have expected this to be shown. So let's look here. Image, oops, made a mistake. Let's bring that again. So here, looks fine, but it's EV12. That's probably not correct. What we should have here is most probably brightly lit nighttime streets, right? Which is 7. Let's put 7. That's too bright. I'm adjusting the intensity. So that looks, my HDR looks fine. And now you can see that my object is also lighting properly for this environment. Now, if I'm loading back this HDR, iView will remember all those EV. And you have calibrated properly your HDR for your environment, and all your objects that lits also lits properly in the various environments that they are supposed to be.